Welcome to our Python and AWS for Data Analytics Bootcamp. In this video, we will explore what data pipelines are and why they are crucial for integrating different systems. We will also see real-world examples of how they are used in business analytics and decision making. So let's start with the basics. A data pipeline is a set of processes designed to extract data from one system, transform it into useful format, load it into another system where it can be analyzed and utilized. These pipelines can be as simple as one step transfer or as complex as multi step flows involving various transformations and validations. The main components of a data pipeline usually include extraction from a source database and a database transformation to fit operational needs and a data load into the target database or a data warehouse. The aim is to streamline and automate the flow of data, reduce human errors, and enhance data integrity. Moving on to why data movement is so important. In our digitally connected world, businesses operate across multiple platforms and systems. Without effective data pipelines, these systems remain siloed, hindering the ability to make informed decisions based on comprehensive data analysis. Data pipelines facilitate the integration of these disparate systems, allowing organizations to harness a complete view of their data landscape. This integration is key to deriving actionable insights, improving operational efficiency, and driving innovation. Moving on to real world examples in Australia, let's consider the Australian Tax Office and the ATO. The Australian Tax Office has launched a new API gateway to improve the way its tax and super clients consume digital services. For instance, if you're using popular systems such as SAP in large enterprises or Xero for small to medium businesses, you can complete the monthly GST related business activity statements directly from your applications or file annual tax returns. In recent developments within the Australia's healthcare sector, significant advancements have been made to the My Health Records, a pivotal service where the majority of Australians have their medical records stored, including the vaccination details. You may have seen in the news where Deloitte to be awarded a crucial contract to replace the legacy Oracle gateway with a more modern, efficient web service framework and a standardized API gateway. This transformation is set to enhance how healthcare data, including critical vaccination information, is managed and accessed across the country. By moving to modern web services and standard API gateway, the system will improve scalability, security, and interoperability. Let's dive into the world of APIs, or application programming interfaces, and their crucial role in building data pipelines. So, what are APIs? An API is a set of rules and specifications that different software programs can follow to communicate with each other. Think of it as a translator or a messenger that allows two applications to talk to each other in a standardized way. APIs are vital in building integrated systems that are efficient, secure, and scalable. We'll use the My Health Records systems in Australia as our example, focusing on how APIs facilitate real time updates for COVID-19 vaccinations. In the context of the Australia's My Health Record, APIs allow different systems from local GP clinics and pharmacies to large state vaccination centers to connect and update the central database securely and in real time. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine you have just received a COVID-19 vaccine. Whether you got it at the local pharmacy, a GP, or a vaccination center, the healthcare provider needs to update this information in the My Health Record system. Here's where APIs come in. The healthcare provider system will use an API to send your vaccination details to the My Health Record system. The API ensures that your vaccine information is updated accurately and promptly into your centralized health record. This update then becomes immediately accessible to any authorized healthcare provider across the country. This means if you visit a hospital or another clinic, the doctors will be able to have instant access to your updated vaccination status thanks to the API facilitating this critical data integration. This example underscores the importance of APIs in developing the data pipeline. They enable seamless data integration across various services, enhancing the continuity and quality of care in this example of healthcare. By providing a reliable means to update and access critical health informations, APIs help keep healthcare services interconnected and responsive to patients' needs. Now, let's shift gears and get hands on. Let me take you through how to create your first API in AWS and have it accessible to anyone over the internet. But first, let me help you get started by creating an account in AWS. Then, we will create a simple function in Python using AWS Lambda function. And then we will create an APIs and let's get this tested. So let's get started. I will search for AWS, click on the Amazon Web Services. You can see there is a button called Create a Free Account. Let's click on this. Let me use a temporary email. I will give myself a name, Callum Burr, temp account. You'll have to verify your email. You'll have to give yourself a password. Your password will needs to be hard. Okay, so what I'm going to do is complete the security. Okay, it did not like that. Okay, notice that it's asking me a number of questions. I'll just go ahead and say personal. It's asking me for a full name. It's asking for a phone number, country, address, postcode. Now, once you've completed this, go ahead and it will also ask you for credit card details. You will need a credit card in order to proceed with this process. Hopefully by now you've already set up your AWS account. After you've logged in, you may be able to see something like what I see on my screen. The first thing I want you to do is go to this search bar on the top and click on Lambda. Okay. Now, what we will do is we will create our first function. So click on the orange button called Create a Function. There are several options of creating a new function. In this case, say author from scratch. Let's give it a function name and let's call it something simple like my first function. For runtime, we will pick Python 3.12. Leave the architecture as it is, permissions as it is, and we'll just select the defaults and click on Create a Function. So you can see on the top, it says successfully created the function my first function. Now let's go ahead and have a look at what's created. At the bottom where it says source code, notice that there is a file called lambda underscore function.py. This is the automatic function that is provided by AWS. In this function, you have a method called lambda underscore handler. It takes two arguments called event and context. This is just a bare bone skeleton. This application returns status code 200 and says hello from Lambda. Let's just change this and say hello from Callum. Now that I have made changes to my code, the first thing I will do is deploy this code. My Python code is now deployed. Let's give it a test. I'll click on test. Since I'm clicking on the test for the first time, I need to create a test event. Let's just call this my first function test. We'll keep everything as it is. Click on save. Let's click on test. Here you go. I got a response. The response has a status code of 200 and the body of the content says hello from Callum. We have successfully created your first Lambda function. So now that my Lambda function is working, all I have to do is click on Add Trigger to create my API. Let's go ahead and do that. Here I have to select a source. What this means is I will have an API that will trigger this Lambda function that I just created. So my intent is to create a new API. You have two options, HTTP API or a REST API. For simplicity, I will simply select a HTTP API. For this API, for simplicity, let me go ahead and click open. This just means that there will not be any password in order for me to get access to this API. Let me go ahead and keep the defaults. There you go. My API is created. Now, let's have a look at how do we trigger this API. Let's click on API Gateway. You can see that this API automatically has been given a API endpoint, which is HTTPS and the URL for this API. Now let's click on this API URL. Voila! Here's my API on the internet. Now that you have had a first look at your API, let's get us set up to do a lot more testing with your APIs. There are many ways to interact with an API. We have just seen an example of you interacting with an API using the web browser. But as you start to do some more sophisticated work, we're going to need a proper tool to interact with your APIs. There are a number of tools you can use. In this example, I want to show you how to use ThunderClient. You can also read up about a more popular tool called Postman. But for now, let's go ahead and install ThunderClient in Visual Studio Code. So first, click on Extensions in your Visual Studio Code. Start Visual Studio Code if you haven't done so. Under the Search Extensions, type in ThunderClient. You can see ThunderClient. Since I have already installed it, I can see it does not give me the option to install it. If you haven't installed it, you will see an option called Install. Go ahead and click Install. If your installation has been successful, you will see on your left-hand navigation an icon called ThunderClient. Let's click on this icon called ThunderClient. And once you have done that, we will click on a new button called New Request. Under the New Request, we will keep the method called get because that's the one that we want to set up, and we will replace this URL with the URL that was provided to us by the API gateway. I've just done a copy and paste, and let's click on send. There you go. One more time. In the response, you can see hello from Callum. So let's recap. I hope you have understood how APIs are used for data pipelines to bring data across from disparate systems. I hope by now you have also managed to utilize AWS Lambda function to create your first API. And you've installed ThunderClient and have been able to test your API. Next, we will create some more complex APIs that resemble real-world scenarios.